First of all, as a youngster, I played a lot of sports, and my initial sports influence came actually, believe it or not, from the Chicago Blackhawks. Tony Exposito, the Hall brothers. Even though one played outside of Chicago, but I was real crazy about the Expositos feel as well. Stan Mikita, Dennis Magnuson, and you all may or may not know these cats, but these were the guys I grew up with in the early 70s or mid 70s. And so, in our neighborhood, all the little black kids, we built our own nets out of barbed wire and wood, and would carry them to the white neighborhoods and Hispanic neighborhoods. And we would play them on ice during the winter and on roller skates during the summer. And graduated when we moved from the north side of Chicago to the south side. We started into baseball. I grew out of hockey, grew into baseball, and we were traveling up and down Michigan Avenue on the south side of Chicago out to West Pullman area to play the teams out there in baseball. And then one day I went to visit my grandparents in Hammond, Indiana for the summer. Went down there about 5'7", 5'8", and came back 6'4". So basketball, I was sold on it. It was the next thing in line. I couldn't afford the hockey skates, and baseball I just kind of grew out of. I know that, for me, I played at Carver High School under Coach Horace Howard. I only had 2 full years of high school basketball at Carver. And I truly came in under the radar. I was what they call the blue chip. Everybody had no idea of what my capacity or ability would be. But I was playing against pros at 16. So I had this chip on my shoulder that came from growing up in the streets, and then also competing against professional types at a young age. By the time I did come into my junior year, I already felt like no one could play me. I felt like I was always the best player on the court. And it was just my mentality that I quietly kept to myself. And it's always been a part of my life, is that if I can't prove to you by my ability how good I am at what I do, then me telling you about it won't help, But I spent 2 years at Carver. And as far as the recruitment story, I did not know if DePaul was recruiting me or not. I was being recruited by pretty much every major college in the country because even though I was under the radar, a lot of them found out about me. I didn't go to the 5-star or BC or any of those camps where, the cats were graded. I went to Athletes for Better Education camp, a camp that was local in Chicago by Forrest Harris. And I met a lot of the cats that I read about in the Chicago Sun-Times and the Tribune, but, and they got to see me for the first time too in that camp. But I actually, my recruiting story is really, something I enjoy sharing because, I just couldn't understand that Bobby Knight and Tark, who was then at UNLV, and Lute Olson at Iowa, if all these cats could recruit me and invite me out to their schools, how come DePaul and Ray Meyer couldn't recruit me? So I got on the phone one day and I called him. I called Ray and I asked him, I said, "How you doing? My name is Terry Cummings." I said, "I just want to know why you all are not recruiting me." I said, "I want to stay home. And I think the DePaul is the best school for me." He said, "Well, we've been trying to get to you, but your coach won't let us get through you." So I got on the L train and caught the train down to north side and checked out the campus, sat down and talked with Ray, and my letter of intent, and I wound up being at DePaul. And it's literally, to me, it sounds like real old school, but back then we were not boys. We were men already. By the time we came out of high school, we already had responsibilities that proved that. And so my mom and dad were not the most educated people, but the smartest people I knew. And they allowed me to be my own man. I made my own choices and decisions, whereas basketball and college and things were concerned because neither of them had been there. So I was trendsetting for the whole family.
It's an incredible story. I got a couple little follow-ups that I'd love to hear a little bit more about, which is, what was the context that you were playing alongside these pros? Where were you running into them, and where were these games happening? And then tell me how that made you, I'm guessing, a much better player.
Well, back then, Kevin, I don't know if you remember this stuff, but back then, the Summer Pro League in Chicago was bigger than anything. It was bigger than DePaul. It was bigger than, the Bulls and everything. But it also encompassed DePaul and the Bulls, because all the players from the league came to play. All the college players came to play. The overseas pros, cats from like that didn't get any renown on the high school, college level could play in those leagues and compete against, because Mike would play. Me and Michael Jordan played on the same team for about 7 or 8 years, and Playboy sponsored our team. So we had I mean, each we won the championship every other year or every year, and it wasn't because it was weak talent. It was a lot of great players. Everybody came back to play in the league, at the summer league. It started out at Chicago State University and moved around to a couple of different places, including Malcolm X College. But it was there that, you had to fight to get a spot on those teams. And I was young, and they didn't allow players as young as I was to play. But because of my size and my aggression, from what I understood, they took a chance on me that I could handle myself in there, and I could. In fact, one of my really big games was the year Dave Corzine was coming out of the league, and I got to play against him, I think as a junior in high school or a senior, but, it was a great game. I was exposed to, Dr. J and all of the cats, Mickey Johnson, that came from the city of Chicago, Ricky Green. I mean, I saw a lot of great talent before I even knew what it was or even knew who I really was. In fact, I think that a lot of fame and stuff that Terry Cummings carries, it didn't just come from DePaul or the NBA. It came from the fact that I would go into the communities and play. I literally, not just in the pro-am, but there were certain parks around the city that just are huge on cats like myself and college players up and coming will go to those places and ball. And it'd be wall to wall people outside along the courts, but they were drawn to the fact that, these players are coming out here displaying their abilities on the outside. And I, for me, that was always a way I kept my chip too. I played against cats nobody knew. Well, I always made things simple to myself. I never blew things out of proportion. To me, things are only what they were. And, having grown up in the inner city of Chicago, I saw a lot of things that made life really simple. I saw my first man killed when I was 7 or 8 years old right in front of me. And so when you start to understand the value or the mortality of life, you don't trip on the novelties of someone expressing a joy for what you do when they don't know who you really are. And it's not to make yourself bigger or better, but, for me, came down to simple arithmetic. Come from a family of 13, count me, 7 boys, 6 girls. Everything we got, we earned, we worked for. We didn't grow up in the best neighborhood or the worst neighborhood, but it just wasn't conducive to how I knew I wanted to raise my children when I grew up. I can look back at all of those things and know that all of those things had a lot to do with how balanced I was, and a huge part was my walk Christian wise too. But even before I got into the walk of Christianity, I was the kid on the block that if I was walking down the street and I saw a gang of cats coming on the other side or coming up in front of me, I would just cross over. I wasn't the one that was going to try to walk through them and take a beating for no reason at all. I was always thinking about, the next day or the next moment. What do you want to do with yourself? Because if you go down there through that crowd of guys, it's going to be some trouble for you, But that in a nutshell. I always loved contact. I grew up with older brothers. These cats will always beat me up. And so I remember coming home from Indiana at 6'4", about 170 pounds. And the tallest of my brothers, Lee, who was the cream of the crop at the time, I stood head and shoulders over him and went straight through him one day. And that was the last time I have ever had an issue with him. But I figured if I could survive at home, I could survive anywhere. I wasn't a wheels fall off guy. For me, everything is about mission. Yeah, I think that your life is more complete when you understand your assignment and you fulfill your mission. And for me, um, the first 10 years of my career, I was chasing, the ring, wanted to win the championship. I played in a couple conference finals, but never made it to the championship round. And I came to the conclusion the year I tore my knee up, it was like one of the greatest blessings because I was no longer the man. It was no longer required of me to get 20 and 10 every night. But I was determined that I was not going to be that guy to sit at the end of the bench and limps off the court at the end of every game. So my mindset was I'm going to make the second team the best second team in the league. No matter what team I play on, we're going to whoop the first team every practice, get them ready. And that was, I'm not saying it to hype myself. It was the way I kept myself sharp and reminded myself of who I was even after the injury because I tore the ACL playing outdoors in Morgan Park. And the irony is when I finally healed up from the ACL surgery, the first thing I did was go back out to the park and conquer the fear. Not be afraid to go do what I've been doing that has been successful for me all these years just because something happened. And it humbled me in a lot of ways because I became a different kind of leader. I've always led men. But in that season after the injury, I became a whole nother kind of leader because they knew my struggle and they knew where I come from. And then here he is outrunning 20-year-olds in sprints, at 35 and 40 years old. And that was my determination, that I was not going to, be the one sitting up there, woe is me. I've been through some physical things that, a lot of us have had issues with different things in our lives. I use them as catalysts to get to the next level. But my greatest DePaul reality is the relationship I had with Ray Meyer. And from the day I called to invite myself to the school, and recruited myself to the school, I never stopped going in his office or sitting down with him after or before practices and talking about the whole gamut of everything from politics to religion to sports to business to family. And it was one of the most encouraging things because I often have said in articles and interviews over the years that one of the great things about DePaul for me was that Ray and Joey and them allowed me to be my own man. They didn't try to come in and tamper with me. They let me be who I was. And I'd always been responsible. I always was the cat. If we were practicing, I was the first there, the last to leave. And I would run through the walls in practice because that's what I wanted to do in the games. But that was in part one of the great lessons. One of the others was a lesson I learned in high school through my coach, Horace Howard at Carver. And it was that if there's someone in front of you, when you get to where you're going, you have to wait your turn so that when your turn comes, you're prepared. You stay in a place of preparedness. And for me, it meant when I came to DePaul, the first thing they said to me is, this is Mark's team. And then I don't care how good you think you are, this is Mark's team. They made it really clear to me. And I didn't gripe because I learned the lesson in high school with Coach Howard because I was 16 years old and whining. And, just like, look, I'm going to quit. I'm not sitting on nobody's bench. I want to play. And I sat on the bench that whole sophomore year. But my junior year, when my time came, I was ready. And then by the time I got to DePaul, the same thing had happened. And I was way more mature by then because I've been through this before and I didn't have to lie to myself about what was going on. But when my time came, which was my junior year at DePaul, national televised game against Louisville, I think I came out with about 37, 39 points and about 19, 20 rebounds. And that was the beginning of being that guy that is the face of DePaul that year. But we had so many great players to come through there to that point, and it was an honor to be at DePaul. And I have to say this too because one of the things that really helped us at DePaul, because when I travel around the country and the world now, people still talk to me about they saw me play in college. And the one thing that really elevated us, aside from the type of players we had, was WGN. WGN became that super station, and we were all over the country and all over the world every week. and it exposed us on a whole nother level to all kind of groups of people. But this is something that DePaul benefited from, and also us as athletes. But one other thing about DePaul that I'll never forget is just, when people ask you, what do you miss playing, whether it's college or pro, Kevin, I always tell them, no, I don't miss playing. I miss the guys I played with and I played against. And that is one of the challenges of moving away from your sport or your college, is sometimes you don't get the chance or the opportunity to connect. And that's one of the reasons why I appreciate the interview, because I love, what DePaul has done for me. And I'm not always able to come to every event and do the things that I would like to do because I live in Georgia. But DePaul as a whole has given me an opportunity. I mean, yes, there were plenty of schools that would have given it to me, but DePaul gave it to me, and that really matters. It mattered then and it matters now. And my family are still in Chicago, and we still follow the team. I mean, we're following the team now and watching them grow game after game. And it's exciting because it's a different DePaul basketball right now. These cats, I like watching them play.